So what I want to do with this book, and for people on YouTube, I'm going to put the link under comments again to get this book as a free PDF because it's so valuable. This guy, Carl Fried Graf von Durkheim, was a psychotherapist in Germany who had been to Japan and became a Zen master and then returned to Germany and finished out his life there doing psychotherapy. But the psychotherapy he was doing was an invented hybrid where he was combining his understanding of Zen Buddhism with his understanding of psychology. And so the way he speaks about it is a combination that includes a psychological understanding as well as spiritual understanding. And for that reason, I consider it to be very powerful. And for that reason, I think this particular book especially is very powerful because the success that you're going to have in transforming your life, the success you're going to have in transcending your life, the success you're going to have in realizing your true nature depends on practice. Depends on practice. So you could even wake up, and you can even have an awakening experience, right? But not understand about practice, and then you will suffer worse than you ever did because now you're awake, watching yourself be crazy, and you don't know what to do about it. Yeah. So the practice is what brings about liberation, not the initial awakening. The initial awakening just gets you in the room, just gets you in the school, gets you in the university, right? But then you have to do the work that's necessary to be liberated. And what does that mean? It means then you have to start to pay attention to the programming that's running in the mind and in the brain and understand where that's coming from. And I want to, you know, when you get involved in this work in the traditions, back in the day, and thousands of years ago when Zen was in the East and Japan and China and whatnot, the way it worked is if you came as a student or as somebody who was a seeker or you were interested in what this had to offer, right? You weren't readily accepted to be a student. In fact, most of the time, especially in Japan, you were just told, go away. We're not accepting students, okay? And there was a reason for that. And even when you were accepted, what did they do? They put a robe on you, they shaved your head, they gave you a spiritual name, right? That's a new identity. That's a spiritual identity. They wanted to make it very clear that you were not the same now, okay? And that was helpful because it helped you to transition out of your typical way of understanding yourself, right? And that was useful and necessary. It helped the person go through the process of waking up. Because waking up is almost like being born. Do you know what I mean? Being born. Did you know when you were being born, you thought you were dying? I mean, you didn't think you were dying, you weren't thinking at the time, but the organism that you were thought it was dying when you were being born.
It was.
Well, yeah, I mean in a certain sense, but that's too deep for the general conversation. But the reality of it is, you know, because the baby is being forced through this little passageway, right? And then so it's being squeezed and forced through this little passageway. And so it's experienced a threat to survival, right? And then it comes out and the air supply is cut off, right? And it grasps for air like it's dying, and that's when it's born. That's when the body is born, okay? So the thing is this, that those initiative things, those initiations, you could say the shaving of the head, the robe, the new spiritual name is like an initiation, right? And it's interesting because Durkheim talks about his therapeutic process as an initiation process. So basically he's saying, if you come to me for therapy, you come as a person. You come ignorant, right? You don't know any better. You don't know who you really are, right? You just think you're a person coming to therapy, right? So he will gradually work with you to slowly move you into understanding and recognizing what this work is really about, and that it involves coming to a understanding and realizing your true nature and understanding that you're not who you thought you were. You're not who you think you are, okay? So he's initiating you into a spiritual process, right? He's initiating you into a spiritual process. I like that idea, right? And the reason I like that idea is because that initiation process is one in which you as the subject of the initiation or you as the client in therapy, along the way, have to make choices about what you're committed to. Have to make choices about whether you're on board for this. And if you understand what this is about, you're making choices about entering yourself into a challenging process, right? That can bring you to a state of awakening that is very appealing, because what does it mean? It means that you have tranquility. It means that you have peace of mind. It means that you're satisfied. It means that you're happy. It means that you're fulfilled, you're complete, you have clarity. I mean, it's everything. It's everything. It's everything you really ever wanted that you could never get from the world, the way that you understand life, okay? So you start to see that, and obviously that's appealing, right? But then, and I'm sure you guys have gone through this process to some extent, but then the personality starts getting involved and saying, yeah, but you really want this? You know, do you realize how this is going to be different? You know what you'll have to give up? You'll have to give up all your secret little pleasures. You'll have to give up all the habits you really like that you don't want to give up. You'll have to give up the way that you are, that you counted on to feel secure and safe. You'll have to give that up. You'll have to live your life at risk, right? So what I want to do is I want to share with you some of the beginning of this book of everyday life as practice. Right? Because what he is doing in this book is he's saying practice is necessary for you to succeed here, but you have to understand how to practice, understand what the practice involves, and you have to understand that the practice involves everything. Everything, because your life prior to waking up was a habit. Your life was a habit. It was a habit. It was a repetitive process of different patterns that you kept repeating over and over again. Was it not? Yeah, your life was a habitual experience, and it had momentum. It had its own life. The energy of your life had its own life. You know what I mean? It involved a process of thought. It involved a process of emotions. It involved a process of physical energy, but it almost seemed like it had its own life. And for a lot of people who are in that life, it feels like life is dragging them toward death, dragging them through the week. You know, dragging them. I have to drag myself out of bed. I have to drag myself to work. I have to force myself to keep going through these boring processes, through these challenging processes. And that's why retirement seems so appealing to people, because I can get off the wheel. You know what I'm saying? I can get off the treadmill. Of course, that's not true at all. It's a dream. It's a pipe dream, just like the rest of it. So here's the thing. Here's some of here's what some of the things I underline in the very beginning of this book. And I want to go over this with you because I want to reorient you. If you're oriented, reorient yourself. Take another look at this and see where you are, whether you've gone through this process, whether you understand this, what he's saying. Right? Very important to understand what he's saying. And you know, if you really come to an understanding of what this is all about that's new and different than you thought it was, you may decide this isn't for you. That would be good. That would be good, because what's the point of wasting your time being here doing something that's not what you really want to do? It's not really where you're at. It's not really how you see things, right? This is not about mind control. This is not about changing who you are. This is not about self-improvement. No, this is about coming to an understanding that there is a completely different reality than the one you thought was reality. So here's what he says. And I'm going to be spending time with this book.
When was this written?
1970. I'm going to be spending time with this book because this book can be unpacked for the rest of your life in terms of how deep it is and how much it's saying and how much it's giving you if you can hear what he's talking about. First, let us consider what we conceive of as a worldly task. It is evident that the prerequisites for this to succeed are, now he's talking about a worldly task. In other words, the prerequisites for succeeding at anything in the world that you take on to accomplish, right, are a mind completely at the service of the work at hand, right? You got to pay attention to it, right? A tenacious will, right? High intention. A capacity to assimilate the necessary experience, that's called learning. The efficient development of relevant talents and their proper techniques, and in addition to all of this, the ability to achieve a continuous adaptation to the exterior world. As a result of such labors, it is possible for man to bring to fruition the mastery through which worldly success is assured. Okay? So in other words, to accomplish anything in the world we live in, you got to do these things. It's required. Okay? It's just necessary. You can't accomplish anything without doing these things. Now, however, our inner task, so now we're not talking about accomplishing something in the world, we're talking about accomplishing something internally. Okay? However, our inner task, if it is to prosper, must be the fruit of a human being's complete maturity in all aspects. And the prerequisites for maturity consist first in the breaking down of the small I, that is to say, the I that rejects pain, is full of fears, and is solely concerned with the things of this world. That's the personality. So let me repeat that. The prerequisites for maturity. If you are going to mature as a human being, that's what he's saying, you have to first break down the small I. That is to say, the I that rejects pain, is full of fear, and is solely concerned with the things of the world. Now, one of the things that I mentioned here before about this is if you are that I, full of fear, totally concerned with the world, you may not be a candidate for this. If that's so much the way it is for you, if you're so totally involved with that, this is too drastic and too radical, and you're probably not a candidate for this. But that's for you to look at and make a choice for yourself. Then must come the perception, the acceptance, and the unfolding of our inborn transcendental essence, and together with all this, the relinquishing of standpoints and positions that obstruct it. Again, I have to repeat that because this language is very thick, right? Then, now he's saying then, after you understand that the small I is not real, after you understand that the small I is fearful and solely concerned with the things of the world and selfish, and all the rest of it, he could have elaborated further on that. Then, after that, you have to come to the perception, the acceptance, and the unfolding of our inborn transcendental essence. And together with all this, the relinquishing of standpoints and positions which obstruct it. So in other words, when you get there is an I that's not real, okay? When you get that, the small I that's fearful and so forth, then you must perceive and accept that there is another I, an inborn transcendental essence. And when you get the inborn transcendental essence and you understand there's a small I that is the problem, that is the mistake, right? That you then have to start to deal with that, right? By relinquishing the standpoints and positions which obstruct the experience of your essence. Well, what is that? All the ways you are as a person. All the ways you are as a person obstructs the direct experience of what you are as awareness itself. And all the ways you are as a person are running all the time like a program. And that's been going on for so long, and you've identified with that for so long that you will keep falling back into identifying with that again, even when you know it's not true and not real. Let me finish this. Throughout this difficult work, an absolute devotion to one's progress along the way is necessary. An absolute devotion, absolute commitment. In other words, you can't do this half-ass. You can't do this like a hobby. It won't work. You've got to get that this is important enough to commit the energy and the attention to it and do it as a practice and do it every day as a practice, because that's how you got where you are. You did every day as a practice, practicing being a personality. And that's how you got where you are. So now you have to practice not being a personality by being able to see the personality and not continue your involvement. And start to withdraw your energy, start to withdraw your attention from the programming of the personality. Because remember, the personality is not even a stable thing. The personality is a process. It's a process. Your personality, you could say your personality is the process of thinking that occurs in your mind all the time. That's your personality. Yeah, because you think that thinking is you thinking. By these means, a man is led toward inner mastery. An all-encompassing attitude will thus have been achieved, which will enable the process of inner growth and ripening to continue. Such a life attitude is the only one by which a man can fulfill his own law and destiny, which is to become a person. Now, the way he talks about a person here is he's saying that you are not yet a person until you wake up and the personality is transparent. Then you're a person, meaning that you're awake, you're alive, you're available, and who you're being as a person is an expression of your true nature, not a separate personality. So the success, the transformation of the personality turns it into something that's transparent, turns it into glass, turns it into something that the energy of the true self can move through and not be stuck or not be stopped by because it doesn't see itself as separate anymore.
That was all the stuff in the beginning.
Yes.
External stuff, that's the transparent stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he goes on to talk about that further, but I'm just adding that here. Which is to become a person, a human being who is at once transparent to the divine being within him and able to express it in his life. A human being who is at once transparent to the divine being within him and able to express it in his life, in the world. Our inner task, unlike our work in the world, does not revolve around external amplitudes, but has as its focal point the transformation of the being of man into an expression of divine being. So here he's setting it up. You know, he's saying this is what this is. This is what this is about. And it's really important that you understand what he's talking about here so you know what you're getting into, right? Otherwise, you'll get into this and you'll be down the road somewhere and realize this was never something you actually wanted to do. Find that out now. Find that out first. If and when it happens that the inner task prospers, it must not therefore be assumed that a man knows or possesses more than before. What happens is that he is more. Do you understand? So this is not about getting more knowledge or more information. It's about discovering who you are is bigger than you thought, is beyond who you thought you were. You are more than you thought you were. A change has taken place. Behind the worldly achievements visible to any observer, there is the inward transformed man who very possibly may be invisible or may be visible to nobody. Yeah, because, I mean, the reason that would be the case is because what we're talking about here is that you discover your true nature, right? But nobody can, your discovery of that won't be seen by anybody. You'll be aware of it and you'll know the difference that it is, right? But other people will just keep seeing you as where they always saw you, right? But over time, right, as the transformation occurs, it is often the case that the person who has awakened and is transformed, right, is the last to find out. It's often the case that people will come to you and say, what are you doing? Are you doing something different? You know, you're awful quiet these days. You seem so calm. You know, what's up with that? You know, or you, if I were to talk about it in terms of my relationship with the women in my life, they would say to me, "How come you're not fighting anymore?" And that's the way it changes. You know, you begin to see, you begin to realize the things that used to bother you aren't bothering you. And the things you used to be willing to fight about, you're not willing to fight about it anymore. So what? We're different. Do you realize that the only thing the two people have to realize to get along and have a relationship that works is the understanding that you're different? Most people don't understand that they reject the fact that they're different from the other person they're spending their life with. Obviously you're different, right? But then when that person behaves differently, you get upset. Well, why are you doing that? Why'd you say that? You know? You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be like me. You should be like me. If you were being like me, you'd be in the way you'd be being the way you're supposed to be if you're being like me. And then we could get along, right? That doesn't work, obviously. But if you accept that you're different when the person's being different, right? You may have to practice this, but when the person's being different, all you have to do is say, they're different. They're different. I don't have to be different the way they're different. I can be the way I am, and they can be the way they are, right? And if they want to change or I want to change, we can do that, but it's not something that we have to do. It's not something that one of the two of us has to be right and the other's wrong. One of the two of us has to change so the relationship can work. No. We both have to understand that we're both being stupid and petty and ignorant. That's why we're fighting. And that's the enemy, not the fact that you're different. The fact that you're different could be something you can enjoy. When you let go of the fact that somebody's different than you and you're threatened by that, you might actually enjoy the fact that they're different. You might actually enjoy the fact that you could ask them, well, how do you see this? Because you know they're different and you can find out how somebody else sees it, right? But you see, don't forget what it said in the book, that until the transformation occurs, you're a fear-based operation. You're paranoid, right? You're looking for trouble, right? Anything that's not the way you think it should be is something that should change, in your opinion, right? Huh? Yeah. But when you wake up, you realize, oh, it's okay for everything to be the way it is. I mean, you actually see that. It's okay for everything to be the way it is. Nothing has to be different than the way it is. All you have to get about duality and non-duality, right? All you have to get about that to pursue it and kind of keep getting clear about it, right? Is that non-duality is a fact. Non-duality is the way it actually is. That's reality. It is that way. There is no separate self. There is no separation. In Buddhism, they talk about it in terms of the 10,000 things. The 10,000 things, right? They're talking about diversity. They're talking about the appearance of separation, right? But that's an appearance. The truth is there is no separation. The truth is this is all one thing happening. This is all one thing happening. There's no outside and inside. There's no separation from me to you. This is all one thing happening. And you know, if you start to pay attention to that, if you start to look closely at that, you can see the evidence speaks for that. Of course, we don't pay much attention to the evidence. But the evidence speaks for that. Could your body live outside of the environment it's in? Could it live without water? Could it live without air? No. That's because the environment it's in your body are the same thing. That's what we don't get. It's the same thing. It's a perceptual illusion. The idea that you're separate from the room you're sitting in right now is a perceptual illusion. You and the room are a continuum of one thing happening. When you're breathing, the universe is breathing. See, when you come into a non-dual experience, when you do enough practicing and when you break down the lie, when you break down the illusion and you can see through the illusion and you can see that the illusion is an illusion, then you start seeing things as they are and you start experiencing as they are. You start to see your relationship to the world and your relationship to life and your relationship to other people is harmonious because it's all the same thing. This is all the same thing happening. This is all the same thing happening. This is all there is. Consciousness is all there is. This is all there is. And this is non-dual. This is one thing happening. And you can actually practice in such a way and develop an understanding that's deep enough that you can actually experience non-duality. That this is one thing happening. You know, that when my dog barks, I barked. You know, when when the ex-president complains about being mistreated, that's me complaining. A little harder to see that, right? But nonetheless, it is the case, and it's a two-way street, right? Because not only are you him, but he's you, right? It's all one thing. The collective reality of ignorance and unconsciousness, right, is a collective reality where we are all part of that reality. It may be more unconscious than conscious, more ignorant than wise at this point as a collective reality, right? But that's the way it is. You may be a part of that collective reality that's experiencing the awakeness of the collective reality. the wisdom of the collective reality. Somebody else may be manifesting the ignorance and stupidity of the collective reality, or the reactions of the collective reality, or the acting out of the collective reality, but it's still the collective reality. So it's a big transition. It's a radical transition to go from the idea that you've been living your life as a separate self in a physical body, to go from that to this is just one thing happening. That's a pretty radical transition. And not only is it a radical transition, but even upon completing the transition, right, you must choose to continue to live in the illusion. Right? So even the awake masters choose to identify with the physical body and choose to identify with being a separate self. Why? Because that's the situation we're in here. But that's not the truth. It's an appearance. So they will participate that way. They'll interact that way because that's the situation we're in here. And the way they see it is, I'm the part of the non-dual reality that is awake. You're the part of the non-dual reality that's asleep. Right? So, and the non-dual reality is constantly evolving. So now me as an awake part is affecting you as a sleeping part, and you as a sleeping part are starting to wake up. That's the way a teacher looks at this process. Right? So this work is critical work. It's critical work. And what he goes on to say here is that once you see the value and the reality of what's being spoken of here, and because you see it, you're willing to make a commitment to it, then you have to pay attention to whether you're maintaining the commitment or whether the personality has gotten involved and starts to wean you back out of it, okay? I mean, this is an important thing to understand because the practices are intended to pay attention in such a way where you will keep witnessing yourself falling back into your bad habits. And the practice is to see that and then to not continue to do that, so that who you're being in the world starts to transition from the personality and the conditioning to the awake awareness that has wisdom and is already experiencing a completion. And the process of waking up is one in which the first goal is to experience the wake up, to experience the awakening, and then the next is the process of continuing to develop your ability to pay attention, to practice meditation informally, while in action, consciousness in action, right? On the fly, right? As you're living, right? So that you can see when the personality is getting you into trouble. And when you see it's getting you into trouble, you just withdraw that energy. You just stop. Stop doing it. Stop talking stupid talk. Stop doing stupid behavior. It's a pattern. Every time you've ever done it in the past, when you look back at it, you regret it and you don't feel like it was coming from you. You feel like something took over, right? Yeah, so now you have to be willing to answer the call. You have to be willing to respond when upset occurs and it's trying to take you over, trying to make you say and do things that are against your best interest.
Is that what he means when he refers to everyday work?
Yes. That's what I have meant in the past when I said, if you understand what this is, you have to wake up in the morning and start doing it. Yeah, otherwise, you have to ask yourself, what is this for me? What does this mean to me? Is it just something I'm interested in? Is it something I'm fascinated by? Is it a hobby? Is it something that I can use at a party to make people believe that I'm really awake and enlightened? You know, you have to stay aware of that stuff because the personality wouldn't mind at all being enlightened, would it? Yeah, but it can't. It's not possible for it to be enlightened. Right? In fact, enlightenment itself is just a word to describe something that never happens. Enlightenment itself is just a word to describe something that never happens. How can it happen? Because what we mean by enlightenment, right, is discovering that you weren't something. And out of the discovery that you weren't something, what you already are, that you've always been, is seen to be the truth, right? So did anything change? Did anything change? What I'm referring to is, did anything change in terms of the truth? Did anything change in terms of who you are? No. No. So when you wake up, nothing's different except that now you see what's going on. But what you're talking about, enlightenment means that something stopped happening, which was your belief about who you are. Something stopped happening. Nothing started to happen because you were already there all along. So you're not becoming who you are. Yeah, that's what I mean by nothing changes. You're not becoming who you are. You're recognizing who you thought you were is an illusion. But an illusion is an illusion. It's not real, so nothing has to change because it never was real. And by the way, you know, the invitation is a very useful tool. You know, it's a good tool. If you find yourself getting stuck identifying with the personality a lot, listen to the invitation. Follow the invitation. He's doing in the invitation what Moochie does in the invitation. And by the way, for people on YouTube, you can just, the invitation is on YouTube, so you can just type in the invitation. It's about a 20 or 25-minute guided meditation that as you pay attention, what he does is he starts dismantling your personality, right? He starts peeling the onion, right? And you just keep following until he peels the onion until there's nothing left to peel. And then one of the things he says is, how far away from you is the awareness? Because he wants to end the invitation with the idea that you are what you are looking for. You know, that's one of the reasons that this whole business of seeking and finding and realizing can be complicated, because to the personality, it's something over there that I'm going to get to. To the personality, it's something over there that I'm going to become. But in the process, you have to discover that that's all part of the illusion. It's not somewhere else, it's always here. It's not some other time, it's always now. So as you go through the process, you actually begin to see that this is easier and simpler than you thought it was. You don't have to figure anything out. You don't have to change anything. All you have to do is wake up. Well, how do you do that? Well, you don't. Now, here's the interesting thing. You don't do that because you're already awake. See, the waking up thing, too, is just a convenient description for the personality. Because you're not really waking up, you are awake. You're already awake. You just haven't been paying attention to the fact that you're awake. You've been paying attention to what you think, right? You've been living your life in a relationship with thinking, right? But the awakeness has always been here. The awakeness that you have as a person is the real awakeness, right? But you have covered it over with this idea that you have about who you are, and then tried to live your life as this idea about who you are instead of the natural state.
You used to say your thoughts are auditioning for your intention.
That's right. That came from Muji. He used to say that. Your thoughts are auditioning for your attention. And if you don't give it, the show won't go on. If you won't give your attention to your thoughts, they're out of business. Because without your attention, they don't even exist without your attention. Your mind acts as if you're a subset of it when it's a subset of you. You were here first. You're number one. You came before everything else. So one of the things that has to reverse is you have to get your mind out of the position it's in. Yeah, because your mind's in a position where it had you leading it, didn't it? Yeah. It uses thinking to have you lead it, and to have you be lazy, and have you be stupid, and have you be ignorant, and have you be reactive. It's been doing that by running the show, right? Using a program that has you be something you're not. Cart before the horse. So part of this, the very initial part of this process of waking up and practicing is to deal with your mind. And that's what I say is the thing that people fail at when they attempt to establish a meditation practice. Because if you understand what this is, and you understand that it must be done consistently every day the same way, and you're unable to do that, your mind has gotten involved and talked you out of it. So if somebody tells me I have finally established a meditation practice, meaning that I know I'll do it every day, there's no longer a question about that, all they're saying is I put my mind in its place. I don't let it tell me what to do. I do what I see works. I do what I know works. I don't do what I feel like doing, and I don't do what my thoughts tell me to do. Do you understand? If you can only do what you feel like doing, and if you can only do what you think to do, you can't do much. You can't do much, because as soon as you do something that's not part of the understanding that your mind has, or not part of the programming that's running, you can't do it. You can't do it. And how many times do people not do what needs to get done that they know works because they don't feel like it? A lot. And not just with meditation, right? Because anything that you want to achieve in life is the same thing. If you want to learn how to play a musical instrument, if you want to learn how to play a sport well, you've got to practice it. You have to do it consistently to be any good at it. And if you don't, it's because your mind got involved and told you that wasn't interested, and you follow your mind. That in itself, if you understood that one thing, you can have power. If you understood that one thing, if you set your mind to something and you have an attitude about it that you will never give up no matter what, that's real power. That's real power. How are you going to stop somebody that's like that? And that's the attitude that if you take on that attitude in regard to this work, it'll go a lot easier and it'll go a lot faster. What the Peace Pilgrim prayed for, when she went into the woods at night and came to a clearing and looked up at the moon, she already had the intention to be of service. She already had the intention to dedicate her life to making a difference, right? So, but when she went in the woods and looked up at the moon and prayed to God, she didn't pray that God gave her the power to do what she needed to do to make a difference. She prayed to God that God would take away what would try and interfere with what she wanted to do to make a difference. That's what she prayed for, and that prayer got granted. She didn't have anything stopping her anymore from doing what she wanted to do. Do you understand to do what she did? Do you understand to do what she did, to walk like 50 miles a day for years? Most people, that's not possible. It's not possible. Most people would say, she was crazy. That's how some people would look at it, right? So if you're going to accomplish anything big in life, you got to get off the mental state. You've got to get out of your mind. You've got to be following something other than your thoughts. You got to be following something other than your feelings. And this work requires that as much or more than anything else you could ever attempt to do. So buyer beware. Be clear what you're getting into with this. But be clear that what you're getting into is going to be challenging and sometimes difficult and sometimes confusing, right? That's why having a guide matters, right? But also understand that it's well worth it. It is well worth it. Don't let yourself forget what this is about. Don't let yourself forget what's available here if you do this work and if you continue to do it consistently. And it won't be something that you have to wait till the end to get. It will gradually start paying off. The fruit will grow and ripen, and as it grows and ripens, you can enjoy it like that. All right. See you later.